Floyd "Money" Mayweather has created a legacy for himself unlike any other boxer in history. The man still holds almost every record for pay-per-view sales. Mayweather did an incredible job at making the smaller guys relevant to the sport and making himself a fortune in the process. Looks like now he wants to pass the knowledge to the next generation. Let's look at what Floyd Mayweather advised his prodigy, Tank Davis. First off, Mayweather thinks fighters should follow him. A retired veteran trying to keep himself in the headlines by associating his name with the new guys. We've seen that before plenty of times. But in this case, the money man might have something very valuable to offer. If you look at Mayweather's career, you might find plenty of stuff to take shots at, whether it was his defensive style that didn't create the most exciting bouts or choosing the matchups at the perfect time. That's right, Canelo, we hear you. But one thing will always stand, and that's something he's done a better job at than any other combat sport athlete, and that's marketing himself. At the beginning of 2021, it was announced that Floyd Mayweather was the highest paid athlete of the last decade. The best part? He retired in 2017. So if you want to learn about making money in the limited time you have as a boxer, it'd be your best interest to listen to Floyd Mayweather Jr. The undefeated boxer runs his own management team and has taken many fighters under his wings, including Gervonta "Tank" Davis. If you look at Tank, he's a relatively big name as well in the world of boxing. With MMA taking over, there aren't many exciting fighters left in boxing. Tank still managed to sell out an arena and sell more than 300,000 pay-per-views. That doesn't sound like much, but it is. Next up, what Floyd thinks about Davis. Mayweather Jr. has partnered up with his manager Al Heyman, and they're trying to help these young guns get the contracts they deserve. Al Heyman won the award for Best Manager of the Year 5 times. Floyd went on to earn more than $1 billion over the course of his career, and Al Heyman deserves some of that credit. Speaking of Davis, the money man said that his numbers are pretty good for the era that we're in. He was of course speaking about all the online streaming services that have enabled the viewers to watch the fights without paying for them. He even used the word stealing for that activity. And he's not wrong. In today's day and age, most people would rather watch the fight illegally, which is unfair to the athletes. Add that to the growing popularity of UFC, and you think that 300,000 buys aren't that bad anymore. Mayweather acknowledged that, but he also said that he wants to wake the fighters up. Speaking about his partnership with Al Heyman, he said that if a boxer wants to break records and make boatloads of money, he's gonna need the two of them on his side. This topic has been rendered a little controversial by the hardcore fans, but in the eyes of Mayweather, your kids can't eat legacy, so it's all about the money. Next up, being a businessman outside the ring. Floyd was quick to point out that he doesn't work hard, he works smart. Many people have criticized him for making a joke out of the sport, which was once considered quite prestigious. To this day, Floyd Mayweather is involved in boxing exhibitions, and he gets paid a lot for every appearance. If you think about it, his legacy might have been better off retiring at 49-0, or even making it an even 50 after the super fight with Conor McGregor. But in his own head, Floyd Mayweather is a businessman and a bread earner first. Mayweather has pointed out on many occasions that he's been very smart with his financial decisions, whereas some of his peers still have to compete inside the ring to make a living. He said he still has all his money, his mansions, his cars, and buildings. The name Mayweather isn't of much value to him. He owns stuff that we don't even know about. John Kavanagh, the head coach of Conor McGregor's camp, said if the idea of prize fighting is making as much money as possible, then maybe we can all learn something from these big stars about promotion. Can't argue with that. And now for the big question. What's next for Gervonta Davis? You could argue that this is the biggest fight in the lightweight division for either of these two guys. Yes, you guessed it, we're talking about Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis. As of right now, they're both undefeated and are coming off of a win with a long layoff. Davis knocked out Rolando Romero in a highly anticipated bout in which there was a lot of trash talk involved. Garcia was there ringside for the match, and he apparently bet 20 grand on Romero. He can afford it. As soon as the fight ended, all everyone could talk about was the two of them facing off. Garcia said that once he takes care of business in July, he'll be ready. Ryan Garcia is set to face Javier Fortuna on July 16th, but most people expect him to win that match. The ideal date for him would be December. This would without a doubt be the toughest test for Garcia. In the last few years, many people have been saying that there's too much hype behind him, and he's really not that good. The fallout with Canelo didn't help his case at all. More than anything, this fight would test whether or not this kid is the real deal and could make a run for the title. Other related news. First up, Jake Paul going at it with Hasim Rahman Jr. We finally got a press conference earlier in the week, and it was every bit as entertaining as you'd expect. The two of them are former sparring partners, but they weren't holding anything back. Paul made comments about his opponents living off of his father's name and legacy. Jake showed respect to the boxing legend, but said that his son isn't as good as him. Hasim has a record of 12-1. He'd be the first real boxer Jake has ever faced. He'd also be the first guy Jake doesn't have a massive size advantage over. This is the toughest matchup he could find. Perhaps he saw something in the sparring sessions that gave him confidence. Hasim did say that he used to spar with Jake Paul with just one hand. Don't know how much truth that holds. The biggest highlight of the press conference was Hasim talking about Paul's opponent, saying that he's never fought anyone real. All of Jake Paul's opponents are either MMA athletes, NBA stars, or YouTubers with 0 combined wins. So the man has a point after all. Can't wait to see how this one plays out. Up next, Dana White is under fire again for the fighter pay issue. Fighter pay is a big issue in both MMA and boxing, and usually it's the promoter who gets the heat from the fans and the athletes. A few days ago, a video started surfacing on social media of White giving $250,000 to one of the Nelk boys on his birthday as a gift. This enraged every mixed martial arts fan and fighter alike. Most fighters, even in the top 15 rankings, don't make that much money per fight. Dan Hardy tweeted that Dana should do this on his birthday of every single fighter in the UFC who's in the top 15. Over the last few years, many of the top fighters have publicly fought the UFC over these issues. The heavyweight champion of the world, Francis Ngannou, made it known that he'd be leaving the UFC because they were treating him unfairly. John Jones has been on the sidelines for more than 2 years because of the conflict he had about how much he was getting paid. And that's just the big stars we're talking about, not the guys who get $10,000 to show, $10,000 to win. Gotta side with the fighters on this one. And finally, Mayweather talks about Ryan Garcia and Canelo's beef. It was one of the biggest stories in boxing when Ryan Garcia joined Canelo Alvarez's camp along with Andy Ruiz. It was a destination for Mexican boxers to perfect their craft under the leadership of the pound-for-pound king. Garcia ended up leaving the team because it wasn't on the best of terms. Since then, both Garcia and Alvarez have taken shots at each other publicly. Ryan Garcia even picked Triple G to win against Saul in their trilogy. When Mayweather was asked about his beef, he surprisingly took to the side of his former opponent. He advised Ryan to accomplish everything Canelo has accomplished first, and only then should he be taking shots at him. Ever since losing to Mayweather, Canelo has become a world beater, becoming the pound-for-pound best boxer in the world and going up in many weight classes. His last loss was to Dimitri Bivol, which he plans on avenging in the near future. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Floyd Mayweather Jr. would be of help to young fighters in getting paid more? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one!